The galactic trade station Harmony floated in the darkness of space like a city made of light. Thousands of ships came and went each day, carrying traders, diplomats, and travelers from dozens of alien worlds. It was one of the largest stations in the known galaxy, home to over 50,000 beings from more than 30 different species. Among all these strange and wonderful creatures, there were only 37 humans. Jake Morrison wiped the grease from his hands and looked up at the massive engine he had just repaired. His Volreni supervisor, a tall insect-like creature with 4 arms, clicked its mandibles in what passed for approval. "Acceptable work, human," the supervisor said. "You may take your rest period." Jake nodded and gathered his tools. He was used to this treatment after 3 years on the station. The aliens were not cruel to humans. They were simply unimpressed. To the galactic community, humans were newcomers. Earth had only discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago, and in that time, humanity had done little to distinguish itself. Most aliens saw humans as soft, fragile creatures. They had no claws, no armor, no venom. Their senses were considered average at best. They came from a world that most species had never bothered to study closely. The old survey records classified Earth as a Class 7 planet, but nobody really knew what that meant anymore. The classification system had changed many times over the centuries. Jake made his way through the crowded corridors of the lower decks. He passed Kalari merchants with their scaled skin and sharp teeth. He stepped aside for a group of Dreth workers, their amphibian bodies glistening under the artificial lights. A Vorton family floated by on their anti-gravity platforms, their jellyfish-like forms pulsing gently. None of them paid much attention to the human walking among them. Jake found Kate Sullivan waiting for him at their usual meeting spot, a small food stall run by a friendly Dreth named Ulani. Kate wore the uniform of the station's security force, though her assignments rarely involved anything dangerous. The security commanders did not trust humans with important duties. "Long shift?" Kate asked as Jake sat down beside her. "The usual," Jake replied. Fixed 3 engines, got called acceptable, and watched everyone act surprised that I could lift a toolbox without help. Kate laughed. It was a familiar joke between them. The aliens had strange ideas about human strength. Because humans lacked obvious muscles like the Kalari or thick hides like the Vorton, most species assumed they were weak. Kate had once seen a Volreni struggle to move a cargo container that she could have carried with 1 arm. She had not offered to help. It was easier to let them believe what they wanted to believe. "Sam is joining us later," Kate said. "He just finished a shift in the medical bay. Apparently, he impressed some Kalari by staying calm during an emergency surgery." "Staying calm is impressive now?" Jake asked. "When the patient is screaming and bleeding purple blood everywhere, yes," Kate said. The other medics were panicking. Sam just kept working like it was a normal day. That was Sam Lawson for you. Nothing seemed to bother the man. He had been a combat medic back on Earth, serving in some of the worst conflict zones humanity had ever known. A little purple blood was not going to shake him. A new figure approached their table. Ambassador Thrixivil was a Volreni like Jake's supervisor, but smaller and more delicate in build. The ambassador had taken an unusual interest in the human population of the station. While most aliens ignored humans, Thrixivil studied them with endless curiosity. "May I join you?" Thrixivil asked, and the humans welcomed the ambassador to their table. "I observed something curious today," Thrixivil said, settling into a seat designed for larger species. "Officer Sullivan, I watched you during the cargo inspection this morning. You lifted a container marked for 2-person carry. You did this alone, with 1 hand, while writing on your datapad with the other." Kate kept her expression neutral. "I didn't realize anyone was watching." "Most were not," Thrixivil admitted. but I have been watching humans for some time now. You are a puzzling species. Your survey records say you are unremarkable, but I see small things that do not match. You work longer hours than other species without rest. You recover from injuries faster than expected. You remain calm in situations that cause panic in others. Jake and Kate exchanged a glance but said nothing. I requested the original survey data for your homeworld, HFY continued. Earth, yes? The file is very old and difficult to access. It uses classification systems that are no longer standard. But I am patient. I will find the answers I seek. Before anyone could respond, the lights in the corridor flickered. A sound like distant thunder rolled through the station. Then, the alarms began to scream. Red warning lights flashed everywhere. The pleasant background music that always played in public areas was replaced by an emergency broadcast. The station's computer spoke in a dozen languages at once, warning all residents to seek shelter immediately. Jake was on his feet in an instant. What's happening? Kate had already pulled up her security communicator. Her face went pale as she read the incoming reports. Pirates. A whole fleet of them just dropped out of hyperspace. They've got the station surrounded. Yulani, the Dreth merchant, began to tremble. Pirates? Here? But this station has defenses. We have the Galactic Navy Patrol nearby. The Navy Patrol was called away yesterday, Kate said grimly. Some emergency in another sector. We're on our own. More reports flooded in. The pirate fleet belonged to the Crick Syndicate, one of the most brutal criminal organizations in the galaxy. They specialized in raiding stations, taking slaves, and leaving nothing behind. They had never attacked anything as large as Harmony before. This was not a raid. This was an invasion. The corridors filled with screaming aliens running in every direction. Parents grabbed children. Merchants abandoned their goods. Security officers shouted orders that no one followed. In the middle of all this chaos, Jake noticed something interesting. The humans on the station were not panicking. He could see a few of them in the crowd, moving with purpose while everyone else lost their minds. A human woman was helping an elderly Vorton toward a shelter. A human man was directing traffic at a jammed intersection. They were scared, yes, but they were functioning. Kate grabbed Jake's arm. We need to get to the lower decks. That's where Sam will be. And that's where the civilians will need the most help. HFY looked at the two humans with new eyes. The station was falling into chaos, alarms were screaming, and an enemy fleet was preparing to kill them all. Yet these soft, fragile creatures stood calm and ready. I will come with you, HFY said. Together, they pushed through the panicked crowds and headed toward the danger below. The lower decks of the station had become a maze of fear and confusion. Emergency lights cast everything in a bloody red glow. The main power had failed in several sections, and the backup systems were struggling to keep up with demand. Jake led the way through the darkened corridors, with Kate close behind and HFY doing their best to keep up. The ambassador's species was not built for running, but Terra gave them speed they did not normally possess. They found Sam Lawson in a storage bay near the engineering section. He had already gathered a group of about 40 alien civilians, mostly workers and merchants who had been trapped when the lockdown began. Sam stood at the center of the group, speaking in a calm, steady voice that cut through the panic. Everyone stay together, Sam was saying. We're going to seal this section and wait for rescue. Panicking will not help anyone. A Kalari merchant pushed forward, his scales flushed with stress. We should fight. We should find weapons and attack these pirates before they reach us. With what weapons? Sam asked. And against trained killers who do this for a living. No, we survive by being smart, not by being brave and dead. Kate approached Sam and they exchanged quick information. The pirates had breached the station in at least 6 locations. Security forces were scattered and overwhelmed. Commander Zarath, the Kalari officer in charge of station defense, was trying to organize resistance. But communications were failing across the station. "The Crick Syndicate doesn't take prisoners," Kate said quietly, so only Sam and Jake could hear. "They take slaves, and they kill anyone who isn't worth selling. Then we make sure they don't find us," Jake replied. "I can seal this section completely. There's an emergency bulkhead system that was installed decades ago. Most people have forgotten it exists, but I've been repairing these old systems for years." He moved to a control panel on the wall and began working. His fingers flew across the ancient interface, bringing dormant systems back to life. Within minutes, heavy metal doors began sliding shut at every entrance to their section. The seals hissed as they locked into place. "That will hold them for a while," Jake said. "But if they really want to get in, they'll cut through eventually." The group settled into an uneasy wait. Some of the aliens huddled together, trembling and whispering prayers to their various gods. Others paced back and forth, unable to sit still. The Kalari merchant who had wanted to fight was now curled in a corner, his earlier bravery completely gone. HFY stayed close to the humans, watching them with growing fascination. While everyone else fell apart, Jake, Kate, and Sam remained focused. They spoke in low voices, making plans, checking supplies, and preparing for the worst. Their heartbeats were elevated. HFY could see that much, but their hands were steady and their eyes were clear. "How do you do it?" HFY asked during a quiet moment. "How do you stay calm when death is coming?" Kate considered the question. "Fear is just a feeling. You can feel it without letting it control you. That's something humans learn early, one way or another. On my world, fear causes paralysis," HFY admitted. "It is a survival response. When a predator approaches, we freeze and hope to be overlooked." "Is it different for humans?" "Very different," Sam said. "When humans get scared, we get ready to fight. Our hearts pump faster, our muscles tense up, and our brains start looking for solutions. Fear makes us dangerous." HFY did not fully understand this, but they filed the information away for later consideration. An hour passed. Then, too, the sounds of battle echoed through the station, muffled by the sealed doors, but still audible. Screams, explosions, the crack of energy weapons. The pirates were working their way through the station, section by section. Then the environmental alarms began to wail. Jake rushed to another control panel. "The life support system is damaged. Oxygen levels are dropping across this whole deck. Temperature is rising too. Someone must have hit the main environmental hub." The aliens began to panic anew. Several species in the group required very specific atmospheric conditions to survive. The Dreth, with their amphibian biology, were particularly vulnerable to rising temperatures. One of them had already collapsed and was being tended by Sam. "How long do we have?" Kate asked. "At this rate, maybe 3 hours before conditions become critical for most species," Jake said. "We have emergency oxygen supplies, but not enough for everyone. What about for humans?" HFY asked. Jake checked the readings. "Humans can survive in much worse conditions than this. We'll be the last ones standing if it comes to that." HFY stared at him. "What do you mean?" "These conditions are already at dangerous levels." "Dangerous for you," Jake said simply. "Earth's atmosphere is thicker than this. Our gravity is stronger. Our temperature range is wider. This is uncomfortable for us, not dangerous." "Not yet." The ambassador's mind raced. They had always assumed humans came from a mild, gentle world. That was what the summary file suggested. But Jake's words painted a different picture. There was no time to pursue this thought. A new sound echoed through the sealed doors. Metal grinding against metal. The pirates had found them and they were cutting their way in. "Everyone get back!" Kate shouted. She pulled a metal pipe from a pile of debris and positioned herself in front of the door. Jake grabbed a heavy wrench. Sam picked up a fire extinguisher, testing its weight. The aliens watched in disbelief. These three humans were going to fight the pirates with tools and scrap metal. It was suicide. The Crick Syndicate soldiers were heavily armed and known for their brutality. "Please," a young Dreth called out. "You cannot win. Surrender, and perhaps they will spare some of us." Kate did not look back. "We don't surrender. We're not built that way." The cutting continued for several long minutes. A glowing line appeared in the metal door, slowly forming a rectangle. The pirates were making an entrance. Thrixville activated their personal datapad, suddenly desperate to find answers. They searched through old files, ancient records, anything that might explain why these humans were so different from what the galaxy expected. The original Earth survey data was buried deep in outdated archives, locked behind obsolete security protocols. The ambassador worked frantically as the door began to glow red with heat. Jake and Kate exchanged a look. They had been in bad situations before, back on Earth. They had survived gang violence, natural disasters, and war zones. They had evolved on a world that tried to kill humans every single day in 1,000 different ways. The galaxy thought humans were soft because they looked soft. The galaxy was about to learn how wrong it was. The section of door fell inward with a crash. Through the smoke and sparks, armored figures began to push through. The first pirate was massive, covered in black armor, carrying an energy rifle. He saw Kate standing before him with nothing but a metal pipe. He laughed. Kate did not. The pirate's laugh died in his throat as Kate moved. She closed the distance between them in 2 steps, faster than anyone expected. The metal pipe swung in a perfect arc and connected with the pirate's armored wrist. The crack of breaking bone was audible even through his protective gear. His rifle clattered to the floor. Before he could scream, Kate's pipe came around again and struck his helmet. The blow should not have done anything against military-grade armor. But Kate hit him with such force that the helmet cracked and the pirate dropped like a stone. The second pirate through the door raised his weapon, but Jake was already moving. The heavy wrench in his hand flew through the air and struck the pirate directly in the faceplate. As the attacker stumbled, Jake rushed forward, grabbed the falling rifle, and used it as a club to beat the pirate to the ground. A third pirate tried to shoot Sam, but the medic had already closed the gap. Sam slammed the fire extinguisher into the pirate's weapon arm, sprayed the contents directly into the enemy's breathing apparatus, then kicked him backward through the hole in the door. That all happened in less than 10 seconds. The aliens in the room watched in absolute shock. They had seen violence before, but nothing like this. The humans moved with a speed and ferocity that seemed impossible for their species. They had no armor, no weapons, no augmentations. Just raw power and brutal efficiency. More pirates pushed through the opening, warned now that something was wrong. They came in shooting. Kate took a plasma bolt to her shoulder. The impact spun her around, and the smell of burned flesh filled the air. Any Kaleri would have fallen. Any Velrani would have died from the shock alone. Kate gritted her teeth, grabbed the fallen pirate's knife with her working hand, and kept fighting. Jake was hit in the leg, but barely slowed down. He used the captured rifle properly now, firing controlled bursts that dropped pirates as they came through the door. His face was twisted with pain, but his hands were perfectly steady. Sam dragged wounded aliens away from the fight while simultaneously throwing anything he could find at the attackers. When a pirate got too close, Sam broke his neck with a single twist. He did it with the same calm expression he wore while treating patients. The Kalari merchant who had wanted to fight earlier now pressed himself against the wall, unable to even move. He had trained in combat. He had weapons experience. But what these humans were doing was beyond anything he had ever seen. HFY had finally broken through the old security protocols. The original Earth survey data filled their screen, and as they read it, their entire understanding of humans collapsed. Earth was not a gentle world. Earth was classified as a Class 7 death world. The survey data was horrifying. Earth's gravity was nearly twice the galactic standard. Its atmosphere was thick with oxygen, a highly reactive gas that most species considered toxic in such concentrations. The temperature range was extreme, from frozen wastelands to boiling deserts. The planet was covered in deadly radiation from its own sun, and the life forms, the predators, the parasites, the diseases, Earth produced life that existed in a constant state of war with itself. Every creature on that world had evolved to kill or be killed, including the humans. Humans had fought their way to the top of a food chain filled with monsters. They had not done it with claws or venom or armor. They had done it with endurance, intelligence, and an absolute refusal to stop fighting. A pirate captain pushed through the breach. He was larger than the others, his armor decorated with trophies from previous raids. He assessed the situation instantly and raised his plasma pistol. 2 shots hit Kate in the chest. She fell. The alien civilians cried out in despair. Their protector was down. Now they would all die. But Kate did not stay down. Her body was running on adrenaline now, that ancient human survival chemical that dulled pain and multiplied strength. She should have been dead. She should have been unconscious at the very least. Instead, she rose to her feet, blood pouring from wounds that would have killed any galactic species. The pirate captain stared in disbelief. Kate walked toward him. He shot her again. She stumbled, but did not fall. "What are you?" he demanded, real fear entering his voice for the first time. Kate did not answer with words. She grabbed his pistol arm and twisted. The joint broke with a sickening crunch. Before he could react, her other hand closed around his throat. Even with 2 plasma wounds in her chest and another in her shoulder, even with blood running down her body, her grip was like iron. She squeezed. The pirate captain clawed at her hand. But he might as well have been fighting a machine. Kate's eyes were cold, focused, empty of everything except the need to protect her people. This was human fury. This was what happened when a Deathworld species stopped hiding. The captain went limp. Kate dropped his body and finally collapsed. Sam was at her side in an instant, his hands moving with practiced speed. "I need bandages, pressure packs, anything clean," he shouted to the terrified aliens. "She's still alive, but not for long if we don't stop this bleeding." Jake stood over them, the captured rifle ready, waiting for more pirates. But no more came. Through the breach in the door, they could hear shouting, confused orders, sounds of retreat. The pirates had expected easy victims. They had found something else entirely. HFY looked up from the survey data with new understanding. "I know what you are now," the ambassador said softly. "I know what your world is. I know why you could do what you just did." Jake glanced at the ambassador but said nothing. He was too busy watching the door. "The galaxy must know," HFY said. "Everyone must know the truth about humanity." The ambassador connected their datapad to the station's emergency broadcast system. If even a fraction of the communications network was still working, this message would reach thousands of beings across the station. It would be recorded, copied, and spread to every corner of the galaxy. HFY began transmitting. The data package included everything. Earth's Deathworld classification, its gravity, its atmosphere, its deadly wildlife, and the combat footage that HFY's datapad had automatically recorded during the fight. The galaxy would see what humans could do when pushed. Somewhere in the lower decks, still bleeding from wounds that should have killed her, Kate smiled. The secret was out. HFY's broadcast spread across the station like wildfire. In shelters and hiding spots throughout Harmony, terrified aliens saw the footage play on their datapads and communication screens. They watched a human woman take 3 plasma bolts and keep fighting. They watched a human man break bones with his bare hands. They saw the survey data that revealed the horrifying truth about Earth. The species they had dismissed as soft and weak came from a nightmare world. In the station's main cafeteria, a group of Dreth had barricaded themselves behind overturned tables. 3 pirates had found them and were slowly working their way through the defenses. Enjoying the fear of their victims, they did not see the human cook coming. Her name was Maria Lopez. She had worked in the cafeteria for 5 years, making bland food that most aliens found acceptable. She was small even by human standards, with gray in her hair and wrinkles around her eyes. She came out of the kitchen, carrying a pot of boiling water in one hand and a meat cleaver in the other. The first pirate went down screaming as boiling liquid melted through his face shield. The second turned just in time to receive the cleaver between his neck and shoulder. The third tried to shoot Maria, but she threw the empty pot at his weapon hand, closed the distance, and drove the cleaver through his chest plate with a strength that should have been impossible for someone her size. The Dreth stared at the old woman standing among 3 dead pirates, barely breathing hard. "Anyone hurt?" Maria asked calmly. On the recreation deck, a Kalara security officer named Commander Zorath was leading a desperate last stand. His team of 12 had been reduced to 4, and the pirates had them surrounded. Zorath had accepted that he would die here. He only hoped his death would buy time for civilians to escape. Then he heard something strange. Screaming, but not from his people. From the pirates. A human janitor named Danny Burke came around the corner like a force of nature. He was using a mop handle as a weapon, and he had already taken a wound to his side that was bleeding freely. Behind him came 2 more humans, a maintenance worker and an accountant, armed with tools and broken furniture. They hit the pirate rear guard with shocking violence. Danny's first strike crushed a pirate's skull through his helmet. The maintenance worker tackled another pirate and simply did not stop hitting until the enemy stopped moving. The accountant, a small woman named Lisa, used a piece of broken pipe to stab through gaps in pirate armor with terrifying precision. Zorath watched in amazement as these 3 civilians did what his trained security team could not. "What are you?" he breathed. Danny heard the question. "We're human," he said. "And this is what we do when you threaten our home." The message was spreading to the pirates as well. Their communication channels filled with panicked reports. Impossible creatures. Unkillable monsters. Soldiers who could not feel pain. In the command center of the pirate flagship, the Crick Syndicate's leader demanded answers. "What species is doing this?" He roared at his officers. "I want a name." "They call themselves humans," an aide reported, voice trembling. "They're from a world called Earth. The survey data says it's a Class 7 Deathworld, but that must be wrong. No civilized species comes from a Deathworld." "Then how do you explain the reports? How do you explain the footage?" The aide had no answer. Back on the station, the 37 humans had begun to coordinate. Using emergency communication channels and hand signals passed through the crowds, they found each other. They formed plans. They moved with purpose. Jake left Sam to tend to Kate and gathered every human he could find. By the time he reached the sealed doors of the command center, he had 11 humans with him. They were armed with captured weapons, tools, and in one case, a chair leg that had been sharpened to a point. The command center was held by 24 pirates. Professional soldiers, heavily armed, well-trained. The humans attacked anyway. It was not a fair fight. The pirates had numbers and weapons, but the humans had something else. They had grown up on a world where everything wanted to kill them. They had spent their evolutionary history fighting predators, diseases, and each other. Violence was written into their DNA. And now, for the first time in years, they had stopped pretending to be harmless. The battle for the command center lasted 4 minutes. When it was over, 18 pirates were dead, and the rest had fled. 3 humans had been killed. 5 more were wounded. But they had won. Jake walked to the main communication console. His leg was still bleeding from the wound he had taken hours ago. His hands were covered in blood, some of it his own. He activated the station-wide broadcast system. "This is Jake Morrison," he said. His voice carried to every speaker on the station, to every datapad, to every communication device. "Human engineer, Galactic Trade Station Harmony. To the Crick Syndicate, your attack has failed. We have taken the command center. We hold the critical systems." He paused, looking at the humans around him. They were tired, wounded, and covered in the evidence of battle. But their eyes were hard, and they were not finished. "This station is under human protection now," Jake continued. "Every one of your soldiers who remains aboard will die. This is not a threat. This is a statement of fact. You have 30 minutes to retreat before we come for you." He cut the transmission. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, one by one, the pirate ships began to disengage. Boarding craft launched from the station, carrying surviving raiders back to their fleet. The Crick Syndicate was retreating. They had come to raid a helpless station. They had found Deathworld soldiers instead. Commander Zorath arrived at the command center 20 minutes later with the surviving security forces. He found Jake sitting in the commander's chair, coordinating rescue operations across the station. Wounded humans were being treated alongside wounded aliens. The dead were being identified and prepared for proper burial. "You did this," Zorath said. It was not a question. 37 of you against hundreds of pirates. You did this. Jake looked up at the Kalari officer. "We had help. Your people fought too. Everyone who picked up a weapon and refused to give up helped. But you led. You inspired. You showed us what was possible." Zorath straightened to his full height and performed a gesture of respect that Jake had never seen directed at a human before. "I owe you my life and the lives of everyone on this station. I was wrong about your species. The whole galaxy was wrong." Outside the station, the pirate fleet was jumping to hyperspace, running from the nightmare they had awakened. And on the distant edges of the system, sensors detected a new fleet arriving, the Galactic Navy. Finally responding to the distress calls, they were too late. The humans had already won. The days after the battle were filled with grief, gratitude, and change. Of the 37 humans aboard Galactic Trade Station Harmony, 12 had died defending it. 20 more carried wounds that would leave permanent scars. Some would never fully recover. But they had saved over 3,000 alien lives. And no one who witnessed their sacrifice would ever forget it. The Galactic Navy fleet had arrived too late to help with the fighting. But they brought doctors, supplies, and a small army of investigators, eager to understand what had happened. The footage from Thrixavo's broadcast had already spread across the entire galaxy. Billions of beings on thousands of worlds had seen humans fight. Kate Sullivan woke up in the station's medical bay 3 days after the battle. Sam Lawson was sitting beside her bed, looking exhausted but relieved. "You should be dead," Sam told her bluntly. 3 plasma wounds. Massive blood loss. Organ damage. Any other species would have died 10 times over. Kate tried to laugh, but winced at the pain. "Guess I'm too stubborn to die." "You're too human to die," Sam corrected. "Your body just refused to stop. Your adrenaline levels were off the charts. Your muscle fibers tore themselves apart, keeping you moving. You're a medical miracle and a biological horror at the same time. That sounds about right. Kate looked around the crowded medical bay. Aliens from a dozen species filled the beds, recovering from their own wounds. Many of them looked at her with something new in their eyes. Something that might have been awe. Did we win? We won. Jake's been running things while you were unconscious. He's barely slept, but he won't let anyone take over. Kate smiled. That was Jake for you. A week later, the station held a memorial service for all who had died in the attack. The main plaza was filled with thousands of beings standing in silence as names were read aloud. When the 12 human names were spoken, the crowd bowed their heads in respect. Commander Zorath gave a speech. He spoke about courage and sacrifice. He talked about the assumptions he had made about humans and how wrong those assumptions had been. He described watching Danny Burke fight his way through a pirate squad with nothing but a mop handle, and seeing Maria Lopez defend the cafeteria with a pot of boiling water. I spent my career believing that strength came from claws and armor, Zorath said. I was wrong. Strength comes from the heart that refuses to surrender. And no species in this galaxy has more of that strength than humanity. The crowd roared in agreement. After the service, Ambassador Thrixville found Jake standing alone at the edge of the plaza. He was looking up at the stars through the station's massive observation windows. You saved us all, Thrixville said. The Galactic Council has voted to elevate humanity to major species status. Your people will have a seat on the council, voting rights and full diplomatic recognition. About time, Jake said quietly. It should have happened years ago. We were fools not to see what you truly are. Thrixville paused. May I ask you something personal? Jake nodded. Did you know? All along, did you know what you were capable of? Jake thought about this for a long moment. Every human knows. We grow up learning about our history, about the wars and disasters and struggles that shaped us. We know what we can do when we have to. We just don't talk about it much. It's not polite to scare the neighbors. Thrixville made a sound that might have been a laugh. You certainly scared them now. The Crick Syndicate has been declared a wanted organization. Every member is being hunted. They attacked the station under human protection, and the galaxy has decided that such attacks will not be tolerated. Good. Jake's voice was cold. They killed 12 of my people. They killed thousands of others. They deserve whatever's coming to them. In the weeks that followed, everything changed for humans in the galaxy. Requests poured in from every corner of civilized space. Military organizations wanted human trainers to teach their soldiers how to fight with such ferocity. Medical researchers wanted to study human biology to understand their impossible endurance. Governments wanted human advisors, human security consultants, human partners. The species that had been ignored and dismissed was suddenly the most sought-after ally in the galaxy. Kate was released from the medical bay after 3 weeks of treatment. She still walked with a slight limp, and she probably always would. But she was alive, and that was more than any alien doctor had expected. She found Jake in the observation deck where he spent most of his free time now. They stood together looking out at the stars. Do you think we did the right thing? Kate asked. Showing everyone what we really are. We spent 50 years pretending to be harmless. Now the whole galaxy knows the truth. Jake considered the question. We didn't really pretend. We just didn't advertise. There's a difference. But now they know. And that's probably better. No more misunderstandings. No more assumptions. They know exactly what they're getting when they make friends with humans. He smiled slightly. Or enemies. A new ship appeared on the station sensors. Not a Navy vessel or merchant transport, but a passenger liner bearing the flag of Earth. It carried the first wave of new human colonists, coming to replace those who had died and to strengthen humanity's presence on the station. As the ship docked, Jake and Kate watched from the observation deck. Thousands of aliens had gathered in the arrival bay to greet the newcomers. They carried signs of welcome written in human languages. They chanted words of gratitude that they had learned specially for this occasion. The airlock opened, and the new humans stepped onto the station. They were greeted with cheers. An elderly dress merchant pushed through the crowd to shake hands with the first human off the ship. "Welcome, welcome," he cried. "It is our honor to have you here. Please, you must tell me about your world. I want to learn everything." The human, a young woman who had never left Earth before, looked overwhelmed by the attention. She glanced back at her fellow colonists for support. An older man stepped up beside her. "They know about us now," he said quietly. "They've seen what we can do. They're not afraid. They're grateful." The young woman took a deep breath and turned back to the crowd. She smiled. "Hello," she said. "My name is Grace. I'm from a little death world called Earth, and I'm very happy to be here." The crowd cheered louder than ever. Somewhere in the observation deck, Jake Morrison watched the scene with satisfaction. 50 years ago, humanity had entered the galaxy as newcomers, dismissed and underestimated. Today, they stood as equals, respected and valued. It had taken a tragedy to reveal the truth. It had taken death and pain and sacrifice. But in the end, the galaxy finally understood what it meant to have Deathworlders as neighbors. And humanity, for the first time since reaching the stars, finally felt at home.